long as your microphone's on.
Mr. President, we're ready to begin the meeting.
Okay, it is 4:32 on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. I call this special meeting of the Marine Historic Preservation Commission to order. Roll call. Blaine Johnston's here. Pam Jagosh. Jack Keller. Destiny Hart.
Here.
Jody Alt.
Present.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Alt, second by Commissioner Jagosh for approval or adoption of the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Do I have any
Aye.
more? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Approval of our monthly or our minutes from February 23rd, 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Mr. President, I
Sure.
move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Alt. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Jagosh. Excuse me, for approval of our monthly minutes from February 2023. Approval of our monthly financial statements. Ms. Schiffler, do we have anything new for,
No new items this month.
okay?
Mr. President.
Motion by Commissioner Jagosh for approval of our financial statements. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Alt. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Old business. Item 3, discuss and recommend framing and placement of donated historic prints. Ms. Schiffler, did you get a chance to get a framing cost for that print that we discussed last month?
Mr. President and Commissioners, yes, I did get a framing quote. There are two different quotes. It's attached to the agenda. One is least expensive option, which is like a simple black frame, which would be $171.82. And then another option would be a wood frame, which potentially might be a little bit more fitting for the print and like historic looking. And that's $229 for the quotes. And that includes, I used to be a framer and work with this framer a lot. And so this includes a discount that he gave to us especially.
I guess my opinion is I'd rather do the 229, have a better frame, better print made for it. Wherever it goes. So I guess to begin with, let's approve or talk about having it framed. What are the commissioners' thoughts on having that print framed?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt.
I move that we go with the 229.42 bid and get that print framed.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Jagosh for an expenditure of $229.42 to frame the print. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now for placement of the historic print. My immediate thought, once I looked at it and saw it, is that since the library district has the control over all historic artifacts that have been gathered over the years, donate it to the library district and they could put it on display either here in the History Center at City Hall for a while or in the libraries as part of a rotating display. That's my thoughts and opinions. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on the matter?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jagosh.
I would agree with you.
Sorry, just an administrative. Commissioner Jagosh, could you turn your microphone on? The people out in the audience can't hear you otherwise.
It's on. Being in it.
It's on. Okay, now.
I have not seen the print, but it makes sense to me to use the library for that.
It's a smaller version of that one.
It is a smaller version of that. Okay. I would agree with you.
Yeah, Cassandra's got it. So if you want to take a look at it real quick.
So this print that we're looking at is a reproduction photographic print. It's a limited edition, number 51 out of 200 of the painting that's on the wall in City Council chambers. That's the original, the painting.
Mr. President, I would agree with you on your assessment for the library.
So Commissioner Jagosh agrees with my opinion that we donate it to the library district. I guess the next step, Ms. Schiffler, is to reach out to the library district to see if they would actually like it and if they would be interested in having the donation from HPC.
Mr. President and Commissioners, assuming that they do want it, could we get a motion that that is officially what the Historic Preservation Commission would like, assuming that they want it?
Mr. President, members of the commission. So subsequent to that, I agree with Cassandra. I think that would be helpful to have that motion because I think the mayor's office is the one that asked for the input of the commission. And then we can process from the legal department a resolution to make that happen if the library wants it, because it is technically city property. So we have to award it to another governmental or non-taxing entity like the library district. And we have to do that through a resolution.
Okay.
We'll take care of that.
Okay,
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt.
I move that we donate the photograph to the library district, sorry, the print to the library district.
Second,
Motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Jagosh to donate the limited edition print that was donated to HPC to the Meridian Library District. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go on to item 4, discussion and planning, May 2023 Preservation Month activities. Last month, we talked about some possible ideas. Continue our walking tours. The Pine Street School has always been a good success for as part of the tours, assuming that we can get someone from Pine Street School there at that time. And Ms. Schiffler, I wanted your thoughts on this also, because I think, isn't there an artwork scheduled for sometime that week for public art?
There are tentatively 2 mural unveilings on that Friday. I want to say it's May 19th, that Friday. So I personally would prefer not to schedule anything that day because I will be fairly involved with those. Yes, that's the 19th. And May 13th, Unplug and Be Outside. It's their main activity out at Settlers Park. And then additionally, on the plan, TAG is planning on doing a historic walking tour that Barbara, that TAG will organize as part of their survey project of the downtown areas. So more information on that, but that will be on Wednesday. So those are a few other activities to keep in mind.
Okay, because we had also talked about possibly doing like some sidewalk art with kids, or even I don't know what it would cost to get like some little sketch pads and pencils and do sketching stations of set up at a couple of homes or something like that, and have people sketch or kids sketch that, trying to get kids a kids activity as part of historic, or as part of Preservation Week for us. So it's coming up fast, but I think we have a little bit of time to look at it and see what logistics we would have to do to have that take place. Other than that, I did talk to the library district. They are more than happy to set up, if conference rooms A and B are available, to put in make the video, make the settlers make the Desert Bloom video that was created a couple of years ago, have that on a loop, and then in between that loop have some photos, historic photos of Meridian and its people that would run in between. So the video would run, we'd have 5, 6, 7, 8 photos, the video would come back on, photos would come back. So that would just go in a loop, and that could just go in the conference room. We could have a commissioner here if needed, but that could just be something the public could just watch.
And Mr. President and Commissioners, so with those conference rooms, I believe I've only set it up like running it off of a laptop. So it would, if it's off of a laptop, someone probably would need to be there. And I'm not sure if there's any other meetings scheduled during other times. So we'd have to get permission from the clerk's office and like around what other schedules there are. The video could also probably go in the library with their screen. And also I was wondering, would the library coordinate the photos, or who is coordinating the technology to run that?
The library district would, because I was talking to them and they would just put the video and photos just on a thumb drive and just be able to plug it into a laptop. So if the city had a laptop available that we could set up down there, plug it in and just let it play.
So I'll talk to the clerk's office and see what else is scheduled and if that's possible in the room.
Okay.
For what days were you thinking?
You're making me think. We were thinking last month that we would do the week of the 15th of May for the activities. Our normal meeting will be on the 25th, but that gets into Memorial Weekend and don't know how many people are going to be around. That school starting to let out. So we're thinking the week of the 15th. So we just have to pick a day if we want to do that, just that Wednesday, the 17th, to do our presentation. I guess my next question to the commission is May 17th agreeable to everybody? And is everybody available on the 7th to come down for Preservation Month activities?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt.
I can be available then.
Okay,
Mr. President,
Commissioner Jagos.
what time?
4:30-ish to probably 7.
I'm available.
Okay.
Mr. President, can you repeat the date for that?
It'd be May 17th. It's a Wednesday.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Jagos.
would that include the sketching stations and everything we have listed here?
Yeah, I probably do everything at one time. So we'd have one commissioner doing a walking tour, one with a sketching station if we can do it. One here at City Hall to answer questions. So
I'd be happy to do the sketching station.
perfect.
Mr. President and Commissioners, I had a question on the sketching stations about how you might get students there to do the sketching. What kind of marketing or recruitment? How would you like to advertise that?
I suppose the fastest way is I could probably draft an email and get it to you and we just send it to the schools.
And Mr. President, unfortunately, the schools are fairly, I cannot contact the schools directly. They have I don't know, this has gone through some of our marketing things before, but they kind of keep, I can email probably just to the principal, but that's not guaranteed to get to any of the teachers.
Okay. I know we could put notices out on Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, but I don't know how far that would get into the schools for the kids to see.
President.
Mr. Neri.
President, I was curious, I guess, on what the marketing of that whole activity is. Because if we're going to use, I mean, we'd obviously have to talk to the mayor's office about the communications, whether or not using some of the city's other resources of social media are going to be used like we do for other types of city events. And that would be probably the most valuable just because it's the widest net that we would cast. So I didn't know if that was discussed on how the overall noticing of the event was going to be done, because obviously that would be probably the mechanism to get it there.
We haven't thought that far in advance. If we use city resources, how much time do you need, or does the city need to get something out and going?
I don't even know. I don't know if you know Cassandra with the communications folks on how early they would need something and decide if they could do it. But I know we advertise for Art Week. I know we do advertisements for various things. Now, some of those go through, like Art Week, I think primarily goes through Parks and Rec.
It all goes through me.
Okay.
It's all me. So I probably need materials and information 2 weeks ahead of time, and then I can write a media release to send on to communications.
So I guess that's probably the best way is we'll get something put together. And I'll email you. That way you can set it in whatever format you need. It will have sketching stations, and I think maybe just for ease, we'll just pick one building. I don't want a lot of traffic. There's some cool buildings I'd love to have sketched, but there's a lot of traffic we need to worry about too. Let me think about what building we should have set up. and I'll task the fellow commissioners to do the same thing. Go through either the walking tour or the website, look at one of the buildings that would be fairly easy for kids to sketch. But we could set up a couple of sketching pads, something like that. But it's away from some of the traffic, but close to City Hall. So we have some logistic things we need to look at. So if the fellow commissioners would do that for us, and then we could finalize a building by next month, or Mr. Neri, question for you. If we pick a building and send it to Cassandra, do we need approval from the commission to choose that building?
I apologize, Mr. President. Pick a building for what again?
For a sketching station. We're just going to choose just one home that's close to City Hall, close to walk to, but away from some of the traffic. Like the
Okay.
I'm just gonna say the nurse house, because
Okay.
not a lot of traffic. But if we don't know that right now, can we decide that between now and April? But do we need to have commission vote on that?
No, I guess I would suggest, at least for the commission, to make note on the record, the desire is to look for an off-site location and empower, I guess, you or you and Cassandra to work to acquire an off-site one, and then just report back at the next meeting. We've picked the Norris house. We've talked to Mr. Norris. He's great with it. You know, this is where we're going. And that way you have some authority behind you to do it. But I
Okay,
don't think we have to wait for the commission to approve that's the location.
okay. I'm just thinking of time frame, and if we wait till April to approve it, then we're less than a month out.
Correct. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah, I think if that's the desire of this commission, I think simply just a motion and vote to empower you as the president to go and help locate an offsite location. I think that's adequate.
Okay, so I'm going to try, and I can't make the motion, but I'm going to try and speak the motion, and someone else can make it. Need a motion from the commission for approval for commission president, along with Ms. Schiffler, to choose an off-site location to use as a sketching station for our preservation month activities. How does that sound?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt,
I move that motion.
Second,
motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioner Jay Gosh, for the president and Ms. Schiffler to choose an off-site location for a sketching station, and we will report that location at our April meeting. With that done, so we can verify if a conference room is available for the videos, and make sure that we have the technology available for that. Do you want me to reach out to Pine Street School, or do you want to reach out to Pine Street School and see?
Mr. President, it'd be great if you want to reach out to Pine Street School.
I'll reach out.
And Barbara is planning the walking tour for that date, so she could probably lead it.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
And she said she could also do a little bit of a presentation beforehand in the meeting rooms A and B, to give a little bit of a slideshow background about some architectural things before going on the walking tour. So I'll get more details from her soon on that.
Okay.
And just to clarify, so we're thinking about all of this as one event. on
Yep.
Wednesday, the 7th.
Yep.
And I just wanted to know, the city, through the Arts Commission, but it's fine to share. We have lots of chalk
Okay.
from previous chalk art competitions. So that's a readily available, something that we have as a supply.
The other item is our sidewalk signage that we put out last year. That we usually put it out for the week. So I'm available probably that Monday to put those out. And I know I ask this question every year, Mr. Neri, do we need ACHD or city approval to put those sidewalk signs, A-frame signs up in front of buildings?
Mr. President, refresh my memory, all of these are in the downtown area?
Yes.
They do not.
Okay.
The city has authority over the sidewalks in downtown.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'll plan on that Monday, the 15th. I'll coordinate with you, Cassandra, on getting those signs and getting them hauled out and put, so. So that's a big checklist off. So, cool. Any other discussion on Preservation Month?
Mr. President and Commissioners, also related to Preservation Month, through Preservation Idaho, TAG is going to be giving some walking tours of the Speedway. So they haven't been announced yet, but I did request that the commission get special invitations because these do fill up very quickly. So at some point you should get an invitation for Thursday, May 25th at 6 p.m. to do a special walking tour of the Speedway. I also have a couple of tickets to some of the Speedway shows that are here. And if you're not in attendance, just come by the Parks and Rec office sometime and have a couple of tickets. I think those are for May 6th, if you're interested. And then if that time doesn't work for you and you jump on it quickly enough when they announce it, the other tours are, so there's 4 altogether, May 2nd and May 25th. And there's one at noon and one at 6 p.m. on both of those days. But the one that you're getting an invitation to will be the May 25th at 6 p.m., a special invitation.
Thank you. Okay, we will go on to reports. Item 5, presentation. Introductions to the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO staff, and the work of SHPO. So come on up or come on down, one of the two.
Thanks, Mr. President. My name's Dan Everhart. Our offices are at 210 Main Street in downtown Boise. And my name's Dan. I said that already.
What's your name again?
Dan.
Thank you.
Still. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to our office and sort of the relationship that we have with the city of Meridian. And then I'm going to introduce Maria Rochelle, our new certified local government coordinator. And I'll let her sort of tell you a little bit about herself and our interests in working with you. So the State Historic Preservation Office, which we abbreviate to SHPO, which we pronounce SHPO, is a division of the State Historical Society. The State Historical Society is a state agency with a governor-appointed board, and we work across Idaho to collect and interpret Idaho history. The agency does that in lots of different ways, and so you might be familiar with the Idaho State Museum, which closed for a bit to remodel and expand and then reopen in late 2018. Just in time for the pandemic a year later. The State Archives is mandated by the state legislature to collect county records and state records, in addition to thousands of private collections of photos, documents, etc. We have a State Historic Sites program, the sort of keystone of that being the old Idaho Penitentiary. But while we own and manage and open the old Idaho Penitentiary, we do the same thing with a half a dozen other properties as far away as Franklin, Idaho's oldest town, in far southeast Idaho, and all the way up to the Pierce Courthouse in the Panhandle. And our office, the Idaho State Historic Preservation Office, our work is to collect, maintain, and provide access to records and information on Idaho's historic and archaeological sites. And we do that in lots of different ways. But the sort of gel that holds the entire program together at the State Historic Preservation Office is the National Register of Historic Places program. It's a partnership with the National Park Service in which we designate properties, and it's an honorific designation. It provides no restraint or review of properties listed in the National Register, but instead is a way to acknowledge their history, their significance, their importance to Idahoans and the nation. So the National Register program is sort of the overarching program through which we do all of our work. And we do lots of different things with National Register listed and National Register eligible properties, including a robust program of engagement with federal agencies in which we represent the interests of Idahoans when federal agencies have projects that may impact historic resources. And so we do a lot of different things with the National Register program. And then we have a couple other sort of standalone programs that relate all to each other, but have slightly different nuances. One of those is our Certified Local Government Program. So I don't need to tell you, but the City of Meridian is a certified local government, or a CLG. And you are one of 40 CLGs around the state of Idaho. So cities and counties can both be certified local governments through the National Park Service program and in cooperation with the Idaho SHPO. In fact, in Ada County, we have 4 certified local governments. That's Ada County itself, the City of Boise, the City of Meridian, and the City of Eagle. In some counties, you might have just a county-wide certified local government. Our newest CLG is Teton County. So Driggs is not a CLG, but Teton County as a whole is a CLG. And so the work of the CLGs, of course, is to promote historic places and to really be our sort of boots on the ground in the promotion of historic preservation, interest in and access to archaeological and historic sites. And that's the work that we rely on you to do, because you can imagine, while it's a little easier for us to get to Meridian, if we were going to go to Teton County, that's going to take some investment of time and energy and staff that may not always be available to us. So we need our local partners to help us do this sort of work. Meridian has been a CLG actually in 2 iterations. You were a CLG in the late 80s, and then it looks like you were decertified in 1990. Then you were recertified again in 1994 and have been an active CLG since then. We've, through our grant program, we offer a certified local government grant available only to those right now 40 partners around Idaho. Looks like we've given you as much as $20,000 in total over these past, what now? That's 30 years.
I mean,
Yeah. So I think we're very pleased with our relationship with the City of Meridian. We recognize that you're the local authority and the local eyes and ears about historic places. And so we want to be good partners. And the best way that we can do that is to develop and maintain relationships. And so I'm here to acknowledge that sometimes we haven't always been the best at developing and maintaining those relationships. We have had a little bit of turnover in the last 1.5 years with our program. So for about 7 years prior to November of 2021, we had an employee named Pete Larange. He was our CLG coordinator. He was the person who would interact with the commission or with the staff. Of course, there's been turnover in the staff as well here at Meridian. And Pete left for greener pastures in November of 21. We were without a certified local government coordinator for about 1 year until November of 2022, when Maria came on board. So Maria's job is to be a liaison to you, to help you access information, our grant programs, and and generally just be a resource for you. And we intend to be a little more present in your lives than maybe we have been in recent years. I am not going to guarantee that we'll attend every Preservation Commission meeting, but we do want to be better partners with you in that way. And so I'm going to introduce Maria, who has come to the office, as I said, in the last 6 months. And she'll tell you a little bit about herself. And then if you want, we can talk about other things, including our grant program and ideas you might have about moving forward with grants. Grants in our program have changed a little bit since Pete arrived. And so, you know, we have some ways that we can engage with you if you want to engage with us. So I'm going to introduce Maria. Maria Rachel is our new CLG planner, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Thank you, commissioners, for having us this evening. I'm really excited to finally get out to Meridian. We've visited several other CLGs, and I think you might be, apart from Boise and Ada County, the closest to us. So it's good to finally get here, get to Meridian. And before today, I had never, I will admit, driven this far into Meridian. So it's an exciting experience for me. I'm originally from Louisiana. I came to the Idaho SHPO by way of Wyoming. I was working in Jackson, Wyoming for the past 4 years. My background's in historic preservation. I'm really interested in working with local communities and doing outreach. This position has been both a challenge and really fun at the same time. So I'm excited to be here and be a resource for all of you. And Cassandra, I have to say it's so nice to finally put a face with the name. So thanks for having us today. A big part of my job is being a resource. So when you have questions, answering them, being kind of the first person in line. And then if I don't know the answers, I ask Dan for the answers. And another big part of my job is the grant program, which, as Dan has mentioned, Meridian has received grants, including a grant to write the National Register nomination for the Meridian Speedway, amongst many other projects. So again, thanks for having us. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions for me.
I guess my one question is, other than, like I said, we asked for grant money for the nomination of the Speedway. What else is the grant money available for our work?
We can tag team this one. That's a great question. I don't know if this microphone's on. Okay. So in addition to National Register nominations, there are several other project types that we like to fund. All of our project funding comes to us through the National Park Service. So the limitations to the projects aren't set by us. They are set by the Park Service, who tells us we can and cannot use money for different things. But in addition to National Register nominations, we like funding preservation plans. Meridian actually has a preservation plan, but it's from 2014. So it's maybe a good time to start thinking about an update. In a preservation plan, you would hire a consultant and they would do some community outreach and engagement and kind of figure out what the people of Meridian want, what the commissioners want, what the staff want, what direction you want to take preservation in your local community. So it's really a guiding document. And there are clearly listed objectives saying, we want to add more things to the National Register. Here are a list of things that we could add. So a preservation plan is something we really like to promote for communities. And as I said, Meridian is coming up to a good time to think about maybe getting a new preservation plan. And that is something we could fund through our office. Other things we fund, training for commissioners, for staff members. If there's some kind of training that's preservation related you want to attend, we can help to fund that travel. We also fund surveys. So I'm not super familiar with how much of Meridian has been surveyed, but that is something we do just so you know what resources you have. If there are different neighborhoods or areas of the city, you're like, I'm not sure if there's historic resources here or not. We'll fund a consultant to go out and look and see essentially if there is or isn't something there. Those are kind of the big projects I can think of. Dan?
Yeah, so in addition to those, and those are all perfectly legitimate concepts for our funding, we will occasionally, rarely, support a bricks and mortar project. It is not our priority, but we will occasionally give a grant for physical work on a National Register listed property. And that I say we have limited interest in that. That's not a priority for our office, in part because generally speaking, those bricks and mortar projects are large ticket items, and our limited funds can't really make much of a dent in those budgets. We're much more capable to help you fully fund a preservation plan or tackle a nomination or survey. So we do occasionally work on bricks and mortar projects. And I'll give you for instance, in a way that actually fits a little more closely with the preferences of our office, the city of Eagle, not too recently, well, not too long ago, I should say, acquired a historic house, the Jackson House in downtown Eagle. And they're ready to start thinking about how they're going to adapt and then maintain the building for public use. They need a sort of architectural and structural analysis of the building to determine how they're going to go about fixing and then maintaining that building. So we're actually helping fund the historic structures report for that property. So it's not exactly bricks and mortar work, but it will help inform the future bricks and mortar work there. Trying to think if there's anything else, but we've talked about sort of broad categories of ideas, and then there are certainly other things that we'd be willing to consider. Again, Maria noted this before, there are parameters to our funding. The Park Service says yes to some categories and no to others. But these are all good places for us.
Couple of questions. Our last preservation plan was 2014. And I know we need that preservation plan as part of our CLG approval, correct?
It's not a requirement, but it is strongly encouraged
Okay.
because it provides you a roadmap and a direction.
How often are those how often do you guys recommend those preservation plans be updated?
Every 10 or so years is kind of a good guideline. We recognize that's not always possible. There's staff turnover, there's other things that happen, but kind of 10 years is a good thought process.
Okay.
In a city as dynamic as Meridian, and I think you all know there's a lot of change in Meridian, right? So in a city this dynamic, the fluidity of your built environment is we're all aware. So it may be more important in a community like Meridian to keep a finger on that preservation plan, maybe more than another community that changes less frequently or less
Dynamically. When is the grant application open? When does it close?
The grant application typically, historically, has opened sometime in October and then closed on December 31st. And we will be in touch with Cassandra for sure as this gets closer, but that is kind of a good way to think of it, is the grant application opens in October and closes at the end of the year.
Okay. I'm trying to remember the last time. It's been, I think, 3 years. And Pete came out and talked to me and our clerk at the time about our CLG listing, make sure we were all okay. And as part of that, he recommended we do a area survey of North Meridian. So we're in that process right now. Can we retroactively ask for a grant to pay for a survey that we've already had done?
I think that's a no.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question. If you don't ask, the answer is
Yeah, I
always
was gonna
no.
say, you're the first person who's asked that question, but just based on the way we report to the Park Service, we have to know what grants we're giving essentially before.
Okay,
So we have just to put a little more meat on that, we have an obligation to our federal partners at the Park Service. So they fund 90% of our staff and work. we receive almost no funding from the state of Idaho. So without our federal grant, which is somewhere in the range of $950,000 to $1 million annually, we can't operate. But one of the strings attached to that funding, because there's always strings attached to free money, is that we must re-grant, we must redistribute no less than 10% of these annual funds to our certified local governments. They're only available to the CLGs, but we must give no less than 10%. So if we've gotten, I mean, the math's easy. If we've gotten 950,000 that year, we have to give away $95,000 at the very least. You can imagine, let's just round it up to 100,000 that we have to give away. You can imagine with 40 certified local governments, not all of them apply for funds every year, but you know, we do get more requests than we have funds to give away. So we're always in a position, we try not to say no too many times, but we often have to say no to 1 or 2 projects, which means that the grants that are already, or, you know, the money has been spoken for.
Mhm.
Moving forward in our fiscal year 24 funds, which again, close in December, we're happy to consider any project. And if you want to continue doing survey using funds moving forward, we're happy to consider that as an application. We just can't consider retroactive requests because those funds are spoken for and they're limited.
This is grant money. It's not matching funds. So if you give us 10,000, we don't have to match 10,000, correct? Or is it both?
It's both. We do ask for a 1-to-1 match. So if we give you 10,000, we ask that you put 10,000 towards it. But that doesn't have to be cash, although we appreciate a cash match. Commission time, staff time, other preservation activities that are happening here in Meridian can all be counted, and we have rates that we calculate that match at, but it can be
Okay.
match time. Yeah.
We understand occasionally, especially if it were a larger grant, $20,000, $30,000, that might be difficult for a community to find the in-kind match for. Generally speaking, our grants average somewhere in the $10,000, maybe $12,000 range. So with a staff person calculating their fully loaded rate, you all as a volunteer commission, counting every hour you spend in this council chamber, as well as, you know, time at home doing this work, usually you don't have a problem meeting the grant match
Mhm.
requirement. And I'll just throw that out there. I mentioned that bit about average amounts of grants. That's not a hard and fast number. If you want to apply for a $3,000 grant, we'll consider it. If we don't think you've applied for enough money, we might ask you to
Revise it.
take more money from us. But you know, we don't have a hard cap, but you can imagine if we have $100,000 to give away and we gave away $20,000 or $25,000 at a time, we'd only be giving away 4 grants in a year. So we have to be cognizant of our limitations and the budgets that we have. That said, you know, it's not unheard of for us to give a $15,000 or even a $20,000 grant in a specific instance where we think that's a particularly valuable project. And this is different. Pete made some big changes to how the grant program worked when he arrived. Essentially, we had a pot of money, say $100,000, and we would accept applications for those funds from all of our CLGs, and we would just divide the number of dollars we had by the number of requests we had, and that's what you got. So if we had 40 CLGs apply for funds, you'd each get $2,500 in that year. That wasn't really a long-term, you know, stable process. And
Mhm.
so we decided under his guidance that we would make it a competitive grant. But while it is competitive, it also allows us to give more funding to individual projects.
I don't have any other questions. Does any other commissioners have any questions?
Mr. President and Commissioners, I have a question. What do commissions need to do to maintain their CLG status?
That's a great question. You mentioned before, Mr. President, that there was a meeting with Pete a few years ago. We do have an obligation to review our CLG partners and their programs at least once every 4 years. That is a requirement by the National Park Service, part of our obligation to them and to you. And so, so we will have, if you were reviewed 2 or 3 years ago, you're coming up on your 4-year review. And so what we do is we have a sort of self-evaluating form. We ask you to complete it. It could be completed by the staff in coordination with the commission or however you want to do it. But we ask you to answer some questions for us about the current makeup of the commission, the activities, and your work. And then we of course review your answers, make suggestions, suggest potential improvements. And that's essentially the end of the process. We anticipate that most of our commissions should, or partner programs should have no problem, passing this test every 4 years. It's not meant to find a way to decertify commissions. However, in certain circumstances, if the commission isn't meeting regularly or isn't doing the work that they sort of are obligated to under the process, under the program, there might be a, I don't know, more nuanced conversation about how we can improve our relationship. I don't anticipate any such concern with the city of Meridian, but that's what that every 4-year review is meant to do, is help us keep those communication channels open. And I'm confident with Maria that we'll be much more familiar to you, and you'll understand our needs, and we'll understand your needs a little better than maybe we have in the past couple of years.
I do have one more question. It's my understanding that as preservation commissioners, we are supposed to have so much, I'm gonna call them CEUs, because that's, as an architect, that's what we have to have, is continuing education units every year, that we're supposed to do some sort of training to help maintain that RCLG status. Do you know offhand the number of hours or how much training we have to do, or do we just have to do some?
Yeah, it's not quite that rigorous. It doesn't have the same, it's a slight apples to oranges comparison with your architect licensing requirements. What we do is we encourage training. Frankly, not to be too flippant, but this is sort of a training right now. And so there is a way for us to have those regular interactions. There's also ways for you to bring in, using our funding, bring in outside experts, or as Maria said, ways for you to find that expertise at a conference or something else. There is no specific hourly requirement on an annual basis. We'd love for you to find ways to get that training. And we've been knocking around this idea, so I'll let Maria tell you about it. We haven't fully come to an office decision on it, but I'll just let Maria tell you.
Yeah, so there is a national organization called the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, the NAPC. And they do lots of trainings. They'll do in-person trainings, they do webinars, they have all these resources online. And a commission can become a member of the NAPC for a fee and have access to all of these resources. One thing we've been floating around our office is potentially paying for every CLG's membership so that all commissioners would have access. We haven't reached a final decision, but if you haven't checked it out, the NAPC website is a great resource in and of itself, even without a membership. And they put on biannual conference, which we will be attending. But it's training designed specifically for preservation commissions. It's kind of a unique resource targeted at audiences like yourselves.
Are they the ones that do the, I think they're called the camp meetings?
Yeah, they have camps, and that's something where they they bring a training to
Mhm.
you. Forum is the conference that they annually they hold every other year. I'm sorry, it was last year in Cincinnati, so it means we're skipping 2023. But in 2024, in Palm Beach, Florida, will be can't say annual enough. The every other year forum conference will be in 2024 in Florida. But you know, these webinars, I mean, was it last week that there
Yeah.
was a training?
Yeah, just last week, they had a webinar on preservation planning for communities and what that could look like. And all the webinars too, they're done live, but they're recorded, so you can always go back in and watch. But they've done, this year alone, we've had preservation planning. They've done one on mid-century resources. So lots of really good and relevant content.
And I think, you know, again, we're continuing to talk about this in the office, but if we're able to make that accessible at no cost to you all, you know, we think that would be another way for you to sort of opt into training opportunities without much investment of your
Mhm.
own, other than your time, which can count towards your CLG grant match, by the way. Yeah, we're still knocking that around. If for some reason we can't swing that statewide membership for all of our 40 partners, it's really not that large of an investment by the city itself. It's something like $100 or $150 a year to be a member of NAPC.
Perfect. I don't have anything else. Ms. Schiffler?
Mr. President, I apologize that this is partly our next agenda item, but I did want to follow up in asking SHPO on our Speedway nomination to the Historic Registry. So to give commissioners background, I think you all already know, but the one of Meridian's projects and something that we had grant funding for was the Speedway nomination to the National Historic Registry. And that typically would have been, we would have heard back we did hear back sort of at the end of last year that it needs more work. And so SHPO said that you're working on it and then going to work with the liaison. So just if you could let the commission know where you're at with that.
Yeah, happy to do that. Maria is off the hook on this. So this was one of our grant projects. You applied for funds and we funded the hiring of a consultant to write a National Register nomination for the Speedway. Exactly the sort of work we want to do. No questions. We did have some concerns about the what we call the integrity of the site. The site has seen some fairly major alterations outside of the past 50 years. So generally speaking, our historic places need to have achieved their significance 50 years or more ago. And in particular, at the Speedway, there's some large changes outside of that 50-year inside the past 50 years, I should say, including the major grandstand, which is just a huge element of the site. So we knew there was going to have to be some fancy footwork in how the nomination was written. And it just wasn't quite fancy enough. The National Park Service picked at that in particular as a reason to reject the application, the nomination, which is how we informed you last fall. So technically we submitted a nomination. It was rejected by the National Park Service. They invited us to consider tweaking the nomination, revising it, and that they would even, at the National Park Service, they would even review some draft language that to help us get over the hurdle on this. So that's where we are. The State Historic Preservation Office is working on this revised draft. we're working on it right now. Jason, our National Register Coordinator, is actively working on it this week. He did receive an offer of assistance from the consultant who the city had hired. They're under no obligation to do this work because you've already paid them and we've paid you. But they did offer to provide some assistance, which I think they thought they might be able to offer maybe in the next month or two. So that's where we are. We need to revise the document. We need to forward it off to the Park Service as a draft to see if it's going to cut the mustard. And presuming all that goes well, I would say maybe in the next couple of months, we would formally resubmit it to the Office of the Keeper in DC and go from there. But, you know, we knew it was a little bit of a high hurdle because of some major changes that had been made in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s at the site. So it wasn't a slam dunk. It never was. And it needed to be a little tighter than it was. And, you know, we did our best. The consultant did their best. And now we've got to make some revisions.
And I'm gonna speak from my architectural background. And I know the bleachers are not within that 50-year time frame. But I also know that life safety codes, items such as that, and those wooden bleachers were a safety hazard. And I'm sure that's probably why the aluminums and the steel was put up, because of the life safety code. Is there any leeway in them because of that? And that's my architect brain thinking.
It's a reasonable question. And really the answer is no. If the Park Service doesn't deem the alterations to be sufficiently respectful to the historic resource, it doesn't matter if it's a speedway or historic building or an archaeological site. If later alterations have changed the character in such a way, they don't consider the reason for those changes. They simply say these changes, you know, have made the property ineligible. Now, again, we didn't exactly get that answer from the National Park Service.
Right.
We didn't get a firm, we will never list this property in the National Register, or that we won't even do it in the next couple of years. It was simply a response that we had not made a strong enough argument to justify the listing with, in particular, those bleachers in the mix. So, you know, I feel like we have a path forward. I'm not worried that we're not going to get there. I think we'll get there in the next few months.
Yeah.
But no, they don't generally consider the justification for changes to a property. You know, someone might have said, I didn't want to paint my house anymore, so I put on vinyl siding. You know, that's a justification. It may not be enough to, you know, to say, you know, that the property isn't any more eligible.
Which is my question.
Okay.
Mr. President and Commissioners, I guess I just wanted to note that worst case scenario, if it doesn't go forward, I think that the city and citizens hopefully do recognize that with or without the National Historic nomination, it is a very important site to Meridian and Meridian's history. So regardless of the nomination.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. There's no question about its significance to the city of Meridian. I'm not worried about that. But I'll just add to it, you know, we've spent some of our grant dollars, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 or so altogether on this process. It is not in our interest to see that money, you know, not make its final,
Right.
You know, see it through. So we're definitely in it to win it on this with the city. We gave those grant dollars with the hope and expectation that this would all happen. And I think we have it in our power to make it happen, and we're working on it. So I'm fairly confident that between our own professional staff, and, sort of the, the incentive we have to not have thrown away that money on an unsuccessful nomination. I think we're going to get there, and it'll be before the end of the year.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. President, I apologize. Just have to step away. I have another appointment.
Oh, okay.
Anything
you so
else for
much.
us? Okay.
We'll go on to item 6, project update, Eggers Farmstead Black Cat Development. I've heard that the developer is rethinking his usage of the silo and the barn due to costs, which we always knew was going to be a factor in this. I have reached out by email to the developer's design firm saying, hey, I can meet you on site, I can go over stuff. But I have not heard back. So I don't have any further updates on the Eggers Farmstead and the development that's planned for that site. If I hear anything or something, I will make sure that I let Ms. Schiffler know that if I meet with them or come up with some suggestions, that we talk about our next meeting. That's all I have on the Eggers Farmstead. Ms. Schiffler, do you have anything new on the TAG reconnaissance survey?
Just that they are planning on going out and starting the field work next month. And all is looking good with that. And hopefully all the commissioners can make it to the May 17th walking tour where they'll probably give us some information about some of the things that they've been doing.
Okay, perfect. As far as future meeting topics, since we are coming up on our 10-year preservation plan update, can you reach out to TAG and see if they can give us an estimate on what that would cost?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Other than that, that's the only other thing I can think of right offhand is between their reconnaissance survey that they're doing now and then a new preservation plan. That's the reconnaissance, the preservation plan is going to be a big item. I know that for sure. So yeah, just the changes in the 10 years here is going to be huge. All right, that's all I have. Anybody else have any questions? Then our next meeting is on April 27th, 2023. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Alt,
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
seconded by Commissioner Jagosh. All those in favor say aye.
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 I
Opposed? Hearing none, we are done. Thanks, everybody.